Shattered Pieces by Orpheus Kidwell, Chapter 17. Selim hummed in thought with a cross of something like curiosity and amusement. While Cinder was no longer seated at her table, another member of her coven was. His scorpion tail twitched as she did so, and eyes full of mad devotion looked at her. "What is it, my queen?" he inquired, wondering if he'd need to kill something for her. He did enjoy when he was sent out to kill things for her. Just the thought had him flexing his tail in anticipation. "I've been keeping an eye on young Naruto for a while, and he certainly has been entertaining, that's for sure." Tyrion patiently waited for her to continue as she gathered her thoughts. "It seems that he's cutting himself off from the White Fang and is planning on declaring his city independent of Vale, despite it belonging to their territory. It's been interesting keeping my eyes on every moving piece he sent out in an effort for preparation." "Isn't that the kid you think is the World Eater?" Tyrion wondered, getting an affirmative nod from the Queen. "Is he powerful enough to take on the entire Valian military force if he needs to?" Salem shook her head. "He doesn't seem to recall any of Kaguya's memories, which is odd. Still, he won't need to fight Vale's military on his own. He's got hundreds of other genetically modified faunus on his side, with nearly a decade of experience in the Fang each. On top of that, he's playing this smart. I haven't seen this tactic used successfully since Menelik." Tyrion tried to place that name, but it seems absolutely foreign to him. "You probably wouldn't have heard of him. He was from a time far before even dust or aura was accessible to humanity. His nation was at risk of being consumed by several different empires, so he sent envoys to each of them. His diplomats convinced each of the rulers they just needed a few weapons to protect themselves from their enemies, but were loyal to them. This way, he was able to go from a primitive kingdom to a fully modernized military force and fight off any foreign invasions. Young Naruto seems to be doing something very similar. He has sent his envoys to the Council of Atlas, to the tribes of Vacuo, and to the oligarchs of Mistral. Instead of using deception, though, he's leveraging the poor diplomats' relations between the kingdoms. Weapons from Atlas, food, water, and other resources from Mistral, and mercenaries from Vacuo were promised to his diplomats to help in his independence. Should Vale attack, the locals will provide no help to Vale either, given they've sworn loyalty and vassalage to Montclair, breaking their ties with Vale, though that hasn't been an official vow yet. All in all, it should be interesting to see what happens." Salem paused a moment and looked at her faithful soldier before smiling. "I want you to go to Montclair and offer your services. This poses an opportunity to introduce ourselves to him and take out some of Vale's military might all at once." Tyrion grinned and nodded. Standing, he bowed to his queen shortly before leaving out the doors, ready to work. How he loved killing for his queen. It was his greatest joy in life. Monkland. Naruto found himself whistling lonely at the cache of weapons that Atlas had seen to provide his city with. Zabuza had gathered several members of the clan and was going through them with Shikamaru, Tamari, Gurren, and Haku were taking inventory of everything they'd gained. "I don't know what you told Atlas, Haku, but you did a great job." Haku smiled to the Lord of Mount Glen as he finished up a particular page of items counts. "I hope this is enough to arm our friends from Vacuo. What do you think, Tamari?" The blonde nodded. "Officially, they're mercenaries, but I could tell that they're actually Vacuan troops. They had this look about them. Still, I think we'll have more than enough to arm them. There's only about 200 of them, but they seem to be quality soldiers with at least some control over their aura. You're certain we'll be able to do this?" "Of course we can," Hidan piped in confidently upon entering the warehouse that all of their things had been transported to thanks to Haku's semblance. "There is no doubt that we will win with Lord Uzumaki on our side. Not only that, each and every member of the clan is enhanced above normal humans and faunus. That Dr. Orochimaru may have done terrible things to all of you, but you've come out stronger for it. Your experience with the Fang has given you a discipline and intuition akin to what one might expect of a wartime veteran. What has Vale done in the last few decades since their hero king's passing? They've grown lax. They've stopped drilling what little standing army they have. They'll probably have to call up a levy just to get troops, and those will be nothing more than farmers and maybe some town guards. To top it all off, the academy and the huntsmen aren't even a part of the king's men. They're Ospens. Even if they have numbers, we have better troops. We have a defensive position. We have heavy artillery. Hell, we have a small air force we can leverage if necessary. Lord Uzumaki can even make sure that none of you die while they'll be taking casualties while each shell we launch. We can and will win. I have no doubt in my mind." Thank you, Hidan, Naruto remarked after his loyal acolyte's small speech. The others seemed to become a little more confident after his words, which made Naruto happy. As he said, we have everything we need to win now. The kingdoms not only agreed to not interfere, they're helping us gain independence. Sure, they're just trying to weaken Vale, but it's the action, not the intent I care about. We're going to come out of this on top. As soon as Tasuna finishes his work on our defenses and the evacuation of our vassals into Mount Glen is finished, then we'll make our formal declaration to the king. Well, this is starting to sound like high treason to me. We leave for a few short weeks and you're spouting revolutionary ideals. I know I liked you, kid. As a familiar voice rang through the warehouse, the group once more looked at the door. Oh, I see someone got some toys from the best kingdom. How'd you manage to get those Eskimos to part with so much tech? Oh, that's what I came here for. Lord Uzumaki, Toshwick, Lady Neo, and Cinder are here. Also, someone else I don't know, but he extremely refused to talk to me, and Cinder said he would only talk to you. Naruto thanked Hidan, but noticed only Roman had actually entered the warehouse. Don't take any of my stuff unless you're volunteering for the war effort, Torchwick. The ginger stopped just before he was about to pick up a particularly powerful looking anti-personnel rocket launcher. I like you and all, but I know you have sticky fingers, so Hidan, would you keep an eye on him? The scythe wielder grinned, looking at the master thief. You're no fun, Uzumaki. Well, while I might not be a soldier, I am pretty good at taking advantage of the situation. Plus, Cinder has some things to talk to you about, so I might get dragged into your fight anyways. With that in mind, the man picked it up, inspected it. Naruto sighed and shook his head, wondering if the man would be an asset, and then again, if he could direct his greed, that could be useful. Walking out the doors, Naruto was immediately forced to retain his balance as his girlfriend glumped into him, holding him tight and whispering into his ear. I missed you, Naru. Cinder coughed into her hand, getting the attention of both of them, which only served the ever-possessive Neo to squeeze him tighter and stick her tongue out at her boss's boss. Don't mind her. She's just been grumpy all day. Glaring at the ice cream-themed girl, Cinder sighed. Naruto, if you would mind keeping your pet in check, I would like a word with you. Neo let go of the blonde, grabbing her parasol and stepping closer to the woman. At a touch from Naruto, all her anger immediately dissipated and she looked at him curiously. Don't talk down to Neo like that, Cinder, he told her plainly. I've learned a lot of things since you were last here. You work for the Queen, right? The Ravenet seemed surprised that the blonde used that title. The Queen, the Sage, and the World Leader. I learned about these beings from Osman and Hidan. Hidan also told me something about a group known as the Maidens. Does that ring a bell? The woman growled as a reddish-orange aura surrounded her eyes and a ball of fire materialized in her hand. You insufferable little brat. Now, Torchwick said you had something you wanted to discuss, Cinder. Naruto wondered as his eyes flashed purple for only a moment. They were cerulean again so quickly that it was difficult to tell if it had happened. Based on what he said, I imagine that the Queen took an interest in my fight, or maybe you took an interest in it. You're too smart for your own good, Cinder stated. Her tone told everyone she was barely restraining herself from attacking him. Yes, Zella made it clear that she wanted Mount Glen to become independent, especially since you cut your ties with the White Fang. So, Osman came here then? What did he want? Naruto shrugged. He mostly wanted to tell me some things about himself, the Queen, and the World Eater. I was pretty angry at him in the beginning, you know. He came in and spoke as if he knew everything about me and my people, talked about how everything we were building would be destroyed by my own hands. Then I realized something. Everyone has thought that very thing about my clan. We're going to prove him wrong by breaking off from Vale and ensuring our lands prosper. So, are you joining us in the inevitable fight, or are you just a messenger? Cinder seemed to be mulling over throwing that fireball at him. No, I'm here to help. Emerald and Mercury will be arriving in a few days. I have them on a mission right now. Tyrion here is also here to aid in the coming battle. Tyrion, this is Naruto Uzumaki, the Lord of Mount Glen. Naruto, this is Tyrion, the Queen's personal assassin. He's a bit like Hidan, except not immortal. Naruto looked at the scorpion-tailed man and wondered if that was a good or bad thing. His thoughts were shaken as he felt Neo wrapping her arms around his waist from behind, squeezing close to him. You're finally going to become king. That's everything you deserve, Naru. The blonde smiled as the girl whispered in his ear, though he couldn't help the blush as he felt her chest press into his back. I knew that you would be great. I'll be your queen through it all, Naru. He nodded even as Cinder left into the warehouse, leaving the lovebirds alone. Tyrion also disappeared somewhere, but Naruto didn't really care that much about anything but Neo at that moment. This feeling of affection, of someone wanting to be close to you and returning the emotion, It was the best thing in the world to him. Thank you, Neil. I appreciate it. I promise not to disappoint you. Neil's eyes filled with a strange kind of amusement as she held him closer. Silly Naruto, you never could do that. You're perfect, and nothing would change that. End of chapter 17. Shattered Pieces by Orpheus Kidwell, Chapter 18, Mount Glen. Haku, send me your messenger. You had something to report, Kidomaru? Naruto wondered as he arrived at one of the watchtowers that were set up around Mount Glen. Tazuna had put in a lot of work the last few weeks, and it was really coming together nicely. He received a nod from the teen. Kidomaru was like Kisame and Anko, a full human before Dr. Orochimaru got his hands on and in them. Kidomaru's experimentation had been with spiders instead of sharks or snakes, and ended up with him having 6 arms and the ability to create a golden silk-like material from his orifices that was nearly impossible to cut through and highly flammable. Yes, Lord Naruto, I wasn't sure what it was at first, but I can confirm with certainty now there is a camp of roughly 800 soldiers in the forest just a mile away. After one of my scouts eavesdropped, I found out that it is the King of Vale's own forces, and they will be reinforced shortly by several other levies belonging to the nobles who are joining him. He received your official declaration of independence and wasn't very happy with it, apparently. The blonde nodded. Thank you, Kitamaro. Tell Tayuya, Jirobu, Sakan, and Ukon to keep an extra close eye on the force, and I want all 5 of you to keep me informed of anything that happens. It's time to make our preparations. They won't take our home from us if we've got anything to say about it. The spider-like boy began speaking into a headset he wore tuned into a radio channel his 5 gate guards used exclusively to inform them. As he did so, Naruto turned away and headed out the watchtower, finding himself atop the stone wall that surrounded Mount Glen. Looking in the general direction that he was told the force were, he held up his thumb and forefinger in a gun-like shape, pointing it. It would be so easy. What would be easy, Lord Uzumaki? Naruto waited a moment before putting his hand down and turning to see Hidan. Is there something over there? The Zealot wondered as he looked at the forest where Naruto had been staring at a moment before. Hidan, a camp of Valiant forces is camping somewhere a mile in that direction. The violet hue in his eyes told the priest that he spoke to Yami. I want you to harass them. Anytime a small group leaves the main camp, kill them. Bring your cultists from the nearby villages with you. Cover the forest with traps that will make them think twice before they come any closer. Take whatever you might need from the armory, wires, switches, explosives, whatever you need. Hidan looked at his master a moment before a wide grin nearly split his face in two. He nodded and was about to take off when Naruto added one more thing. Bring Tyrion with you. This is right up his alley, and I think the 2 of you could work well together. With that, Naruto continued walking along the wall while Hidan jumped down to gather what he needed. Once again, he was in control as Purple gave way to Cerulean. Coming across the first of many platforms set into the wall that he had prepared for this very occasion, Naruto activated Hammer Space and dropped one of Mount Glen's artillery pieces atop. Performing a cursory inspection of it, he seemed content and continued along the wall. The walls around Mount Glen were arranged in a hexagonal formation, and these platforms were at each corner so that their 6 pieces of heavy artillery could be properly utilized. It took some time, but he had all 6 set up. The said piece he kept allowed him time to think over what would he need to be done. There was so much they needed to set up, but he was confident it could be done by the day's end. Their counteroffensive would definitely be prepared when the time came for it. 800 was far too much for a scouting party, which meant that the king's men were gearing up for an all-out assault. Luckily for him, he had people that would be more than suited to destroy any kind of the king's plans. He was only using levies with very few professional soldiers. After all, the king was underestimating his people. Looking at the ground from his high vantage, Naruto tried going through the sequence of orders he'd need to give for this to be done in the most efficient way before he jumped to the floor, allowing his massive aura to absorb the impact and cushioning his fall. There you are, Naruto. Hearing the strained voice, the blonde looked in the direction it came from to see Nail sitting beneath an awning and staying out of the sun. That explains why he couldn't see her from up high. What's wrong? You look stressed. Naruto smiled to her before walking over. As soon as he was close enough, she grabbed his collar and pulled him close, kissing his lips. Tell me, what's on your mind? Naruto tried to gather his thoughts even as his head still swam from his girlfriend's show of affection. He still wasn't quite used to it, even this far in. Hidemaru spotted a group of Vale's forces camping outside the city. Neo's eyes shone dangerously as she stood up, grabbing her umbrella. Naruto grabbed her empty-handed to keep her from trying to single-handedly kill all 800 men, as he knew she would attempt. Don't kneel. I've got into cover. I've already sent Hidan and Tyrion, as well as the various cultists Hidan has inducted over the last few months to harass them. They're waiting for reinforcements, so we've got time to prepare our defenses. I already set up the artillery, but I was heading out to give orders so that everything will be ready by tonight. Neil seemed to be caught between still heading out to protect what her lover had made and following his directions. After a moment, she let her parasol fall to her side and nodded. You're the king. I'll do it your way. She finally conceded, looking at him. Don't leave me out of your plans, though. I want to help you and see your dream come true. She pressed her point, giving him a hard look. The blonde nodded, squeezing her hand a bit. She smiled and let go of his hand, wrapping her now free arm around him and resting her head on his shoulder. Lead the way, my king. She purred into his ear, causing his to erupt into a blush, though he did so after wrapping his own around her. Even with the threat of invasion, he couldn't help but want to be near her when she showed him all this affection. Beacon Academy, Clock Tower, Headmaster's office. As Headmaster Osman once again leafed through the report that he had received from the Royal Chancellor, he was very close to, for the first time in a long time, breaking his mask of calm and serenity. What does it say, Professor? One of the other occupants of the office wondered. Kurenai Yuhi, who was Professor Bartholomew's Ublik's temporary replacement as he studied the remains of the Red Coast, was that speaker. She was a young woman in her 20s with deep black hair, a pair of shining red eyes, and an unblemished ivory skin. Her hair flowed down her back and over the red and white dress she wore, which seemed more like long strips of cloth were wrapped around her body in a very particular way. To finish off her attire, she wore black tights that stretched up her dress and a pair of heeled boots. She was joined by Glinda and Peter to finish off the small council he'd called after reading through it the first time. It seems as if young Mr. Uzumaki has gone and done the last thing I expected him to. I'm not sure what had possessed me to attempt and predict what she might do, given each life is so drastically different. Still, I had not expected this. He began reading from the letter at this point. To the wise and just King Alexander of Vale, grandson of the venerable and heroic King Augustus, the grand city of Mount Glen, once abandoned by Vale to the scourge of Grim, has been resettled by members of the clan, led by our Lord Naruto Uzumaki. For the last several months, we've eradicated the creatures here, repaired the falling infrastructures, and performed your duties of protection towards the local villages. No members of your forces has dared even venture into the frontier and meet us. We take this to mean that you don't care what happens with the area. For that reason, under the guidance of Lord Naruto, Yami, and Kurama of House Uzumaki, his most esteemed council and will of Mount Glen's citizenry, we have sent you a formal declaration of our intent to become independent of the Kingdom of Vale and whatever protection it may have offered before, whether stated directly or insinuated. We readily await your response to this letter and shall be waiting to reply in kind, regardless of if it involves diplomats or soldiers. The clan stands ready. It is then signed by several people, including Naruto himself. That is, the boy. Is he seriously challenging the king and thinking he can win? Glinda stuttered out, unsure how to respond to such a blatant and forward message. Peter was quiet a moment before he piped in as well. If what you have told us is true, Professor, I'm not sure who will win. Surely the king and his nobles will have numbers, but it's been several decades since our kingdom had a standing army. The majority of his forces will likely be mercenaries and levies from different settlements. This clan, as they call themselves, are former White Fang and generally enhanced by the mad scientist Dr. Yamato Orochimaru. What exactly is this kid who thinks he could challenge the kingdom without consequences? Kurenai had to wonder. Someone who has checked all the correct boxes. Osman informed them somberly. I've been informed by agents in the other kingdoms that he had contacted forces within Atlas, Mistral, and Vacuo prior to drafting this right. Setting the letter down, he sighed. He's been gifted several boons to use during his fight for independence by the other kingdoms, even if it's only one city and the surrounding villages, just one country. It does undermine the authority and power of our kingdom. Are you going to send anyone to intervene then? Glinda felt the question had to be posed. If Osman did wish to send a team or two to help Vel, then none of them would fault him, while usually it would be disapproval of. A threat like the World Eater was a special exception. The headmaster paused a moment before shaking his head. We will not intervene. This isn't actually a threat to our primary mission, the Queen. If we allow it to run its course, we can use it as leverage to gain some favor with the boy. As much of a potential thorn in our side young Uzumaki might be, he's also a potential thorn in her side. We need to ensure that even if he doesn't side with our cause, he doesn't side with hers. That boy might just be the edge of might just be the edge one of us needs to pick to tip the scales permanently. We can't afford to turn him against us. I'm sure that the Queen realizes the same thing. If she knows of his existence, we can't exactly send someone to help him publicly. That could cause all sorts of mess with the nobilities. Glancing at the letter one more time, he took a sip of his mug. I'll need to send out a courier to give him a gift, something to ease tensions. Glinda, send me Team Bard. I think they can handle this matter for us. If they happen to get caught in the middle of a fight, I'm sure they'll respect the mission parameters enough to know who to side with. Glinda purred her lips but nodded, leaving the office to make the necessary calls. Peter and Kurenai shared a glance, then looked back at Ospen, who assured them they could leave unless they had any questions. Soon thereafter, he was once again alone in his office, picking up the letter, Mount Glen's short declaration of independence. He read it over again. You are certainly turning out to be unpredictable, Mr. Uzumaki. That could be useful if I can tame the chaos and channel it in the correct direction. I just hope you don't make the wrong decision and doom us all. Sipping on his mug, he sighed. How he despised unpredictable outcomes. He would be glad when this entire matter was behind him and the throne was once again empty. For now, though, he needed to deal with the Queen and ensure the Grim didn't win. Then perhaps he could rest. End of chapter 18.